It is Super Bowl Sunday, and it is the Arkiana Hogs getting ready for the Super Bowl. We want to talk Razorbacks. We just finished a recruiting week. Last week, signing day was Wednesday. You guys went to the signing day special in Little Rock, talked to some of the coaches that were there, and I know you talked to Michael Smith and some other recruiters. Of course, Michael Smith recruits you guys home state. Our Arkiana Hogs are Mike Shepard from Funroe, Louisiana, and Rick David from New Orleans. And it was nice to see. We added three. We just didn't add three bodies. We added three recruits of high caliber from the state of Louisiana. And we're also going to talk about the departure of Jamal Singleton, the running back coach, who's just like his predecessor, who went to the Saints. Singleton got a job in the NFL with the Colts. So in 2 years, Arkansas has lost its running back coach to the NFL. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no problems with Brett Belma. Let me tell you, that should attract top-notch coaches to want to work for Belma and these running backs that they recruit, because it's a ticket to a great job if that's what they want in the NFL and all that pension. And then we'll finish it up on this one-take podcast with a look at what you guys might think Arkansas is going to be doing as far as prepping for spring, and where are the focus areas for improvement to take this program, as you've seen them go from 3 wins to 7 wins, now to 8 wins, and back-to-back bowl victories. Arkansas in good shape. So enough of me. We've got the podcast going with these two great former Razorbacks, and let's go, because you guys follow recruiting and all that kind of aspect of the program building probably as well as anybody. Rick, you want to kick it off because you've kind of been watching a lot of film. You know who they recruited against, who they didn't get, who a lot of fans might have been going, oh gosh, what a downer, we didn't get that guy. You probably have a greater perspective on this. Let's let you start it off.
Well, I get really excited when you start talking about recruiting, in particular in the state of Louisiana. And Mike Smith has done an excellent job of getting down to New Orleans and doing a great job in attracting kids to the University of Arkansas from there. It started really with Andre Tolliver and Dwayne Eugene, bled into Briston Guidry, as well as Giovanni LaFrance this year, and Dijon Harris. There's a ton of talent, no doubt, in the state of Louisiana, and as much of a down year in Arkansas as we had in regards to overall SEC talent. They needed to go down there. And Mike did an excellent job in getting these kids up here, but not only that, spotting the talent. I think when you're looking at recruiting, you've got to look at the film, not the stars. And right before we got started this podcast, we were looking at our offensive line recruits out of junior college, and we're comparing them to a 3-star out of that's going to LSU out of Alabama. And you sit there and you go, well, which ones look better? I mean, it's really not too hard. It doesn't take rocket science if you watch the film to see who's explosive and who's not explosive. And Terrence Malone and the Ramirez kid out of California, these two kids can move. We saw them on film. Mike and I did at the recruiting bash this past Thursday here in Little Rock. These kids can move. They move very, very well. They're impressive. They look better than a lot of the recruits that you had elsewhere. And plus, they're going to have the maturity level to step in and hopefully play. When you talk about some of the misses we had in the recruiting towards the end, everybody's thinking about that. I'm like, well, what about the guys that we got that are there that are really, really good? It's like, okay, you didn't get this Porter kid out of Katy, Texas, and Jim, you and I talked about it. Did anybody watch the film of Katy, Texas? I think my daughter could have very well run through the holes that were there. You take T.J. Hammonds out of Robinson and put him behind that line, that kid would have been a 5-star. I really do. I think T.J. Hammonds is a more impressive kid than the Porter kid. Recruiting services have value, but you just can't put all your eggs in that basket and think that that's your recruiting class overall. Michael, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Most of the conversation that we have are with people that really care about the Razorbacks and really want the best for the recruiting class. And we're limited in our knowledge. If you check out the film, I think you see a different story than you do on the rankings, the 5-star ratings. I'm very happy with this class. I think not only do the star ratings mislead on the surface of things, but also the way things happened this year. We had early commitments from some really good recruits that if we'd landed them on the last minute, we'd have a little more buzz within the fandom. I think that if you turn a couple of those guys at the end, that's what everybody feels good about. When you really sit down and look at who we signed and where we needed help, we're there. I think it's a very good class, in my opinion. I know it's not the sexiest with the rankings, but even with the rankings, it's better than where we've been recently, even including that. So let's keep this in perspective as fans. Recruiting, it was a great year. Sitting and listening to Belma address each individual signee, you could tell he was excited. The one kid, you mentioned T.J. Hammonds. I want to mention the kid from Smackover, the wide receiver. If you want to talk about where we needed help, we need speed. Jordan Jones. You look at Dominique Reed, he certainly stood out this year, and it was simply due to his speed. So we've got some exciting things coming. That's the top of mind stuff starting today for me, Jim.
Do you guys, as former players, you remember, recruiting when you were coming out of high school. Do you guys like the rankings? What's the high school athlete? I mean, we know what a Christian Fulton would be like. He probably thought he was, the greatest thing coming down the pike, that kind of thing. Tyree Cleveland, who chose Florida over Arkansas at the very end. What does a player think about? Like a guy who might, I don't know, were you maybe a 3-star? What was your ranking?
They had the blue chip, gold chip, all that stuff back then. We didn't have a star rating system.
M-Finger was
in Max M-Finger.
In the Times-Picayune in New Orleans,
they had a top 10.
They had, it was the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen.
That's right.
Okay, Mike was in the Dirty Dozen. And then you had the Best of the Rest. That was me. Okay, I was listed in the Best of the Rest. And so if you really kind of look at it, now back then, if you made the Dirty Dozen, you were, and Mike was one of the top recruits in the States his senior year. He's not going to say it right here, but he was. These guys could go. Mike had scholarship offers to LSU, Arkansas. He had big schools, Notre Dame. Am I correct? Yeah. So a lot of schools were recruiting him.
Okay, hold. I got to interrupt. I'm sorry, Mark. You were a 5-star. I'm sorry.
Jim was dogging Mike out based on his 40 time. Yeah. I believe that's what it was. What it was about. And trust me, I was the best of the rest because I was Caucasian. So trust me. But when you really kind of look at it, the recruiting services, it did kind of exist during that time, but it was just different terminology. Bottom line is this: when you show up on campus and you go ahead and you get out in that field, your star rating disappears within the first 5 minutes. Run a 40 time and see what it looks like. All state. Well, that's great. You're all state. Where? I think these things play into it. I was an all-district player out of New Orleans, and I go up to the University of Arkansas, and, they had all-state players at Arkansas that I was like, I know I'm better than this guy, and my 40 time proves it, and then physicality plays into it when you start tackling people like that, there is a dramatic difference in all these tags that are kind of get out there. Here's the thing, and we talked about this right before we got on. Texas and Texas A&M had a total of 3 players that were offered by Nick Saban. Arkansas had 7 players that were offered by Nick Saban. I believe if Nick Saban offers you a scholarship, you're no lower than a 4-star in my book if you want to put a rating on it, because that guy's got a better eye for talent than anybody. He's proven it, and he can bring it in. And we had 7 of those guys: Agim, Guidry, Devois Whaley, Hammonds, Austin Capps, Jordan Jones, and Dijon Harris all had those looks. So, we had 7 4-stars in my book. And then you look at the Crockett kid out of Little Rock Christian. Great kid. I've heard not one bad thing about him. But I know as a junior, people kind of question his physicality. Mike and I got to see him against PA. He looked slow against PA. PA plays a very fast defense. This guy is a 4-star kid. Missouri offered him at the last second because they didn't have anybody else that they could go to. The biggest scholarship he had outside of that was Boise State and Arizona State. So really when you look at that, these star ratings don't play into it. The rankings you can throw out the window. I mean, according to rivals, we didn't do as good as Texas and Texas A&M, but we handed Texas their a couple of years ago,
And they had recruited. That's what gets me about ratings is that all those classes people dog now that Mac Brown brought in, go back and look at them. They were supposed to be studs. This happens all the time. Let me tell you, the one difference in maybe Mac Brown winning a championship is he got a guy that you probably can't put a 5-star on. He's probably a 10-star, Vince Young. And he wasn't great until the year he led them to the championship. Arkansas nearly beat them in Fayetteville again when they had all that talent and Vince Young. So I get that. And I also get that if Arkansas produces more than 4 players, if Arkansas produces 8 players, and in 2001 and 2002, Arkansas had a good run of not McDonald's, that's basketball. Right. Parade All-Americas or top of the line 4 and 5-star guys. Sean Andrews, Matt Jones, Cedric Houston, Brett Smith. I mean, we can go down the list. Some went to Arkansas, some didn't. You can also go back to the 80s. Mike, you may remember, I don't know, Rick, if you remember this or not, but in the early 80s at Arkansas, you had Keith Jackson, Mark Hudson, and Curtis Williams all went out of state from Arkansas. They made all Big 8. Eric Mitchell the next year, but Arkansas kept James Rouse, Freddie Childers, and some others at home that were big players. So there's been waves where Arkansas produces lots of guys. All that said, and what I was going to make this point is I don't think that it matters. It almost seems like Arkansas is penciled in to be 9 to 11 or whatever in the rankings in the conference every year. It doesn't seem to matter.
But think about it. Jordan Jones, Austin Capps.
Jordan Jones is a 4. Jordan Jones should be a 4-star. I don't care if he went to Smackover or he went to DeMatha or he went to Dallas Carter or Houston Westfield.
If he would have gone to those schools.
That guy's a stud. I'm telling you, folks. I've watched him for Arkansas. Yeah. I've seen him 2 years that he's been a stud.
That's the point. I want you to think about...
But he's not rated as a 4-star is what I want to tell everybody. Yeah. They had him as a 3-star.
So if Jordan Jones goes to PA, what do you think he would be? In Pulaski Academy, he
probably would have actually gotten a higher rating because there's been a lot of guys come out of PA. No offense to PA. They've had a great program, and they've won a ton of high school games. There's been a lot of guys come out of PA who did have 4 stars who probably weren't 4 stars. Yeah.
I mean, if you take Jordan Jones, you put him in a big system like that, and he catches tons of balls, and you just would have been in awe of how well he would have played. Yeah,
he's from Miami, Florida.
Or he goes ahead and he goes to Evangel in Louisiana, where they just sling it every play, and that's a big publicity school. He's going to be a 4 or 5-star kid.
Safety. This guy is a tremendous football player.
He runs a 4.3.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Jordan Jones, no matter where he is, it does not matter. If you have an eye for talent, you see the fact that he's 6'3", 180 pounds, and he runs a 4.3, and that's verified by 2 different schools on their own timing. So, Jordan Jones, there's an example. If you want, as a fan, if you want to celebrate this class, there's plenty of reasons to do that, and that we've talked about a few of them. One thing I'd like to praise the coaches on, and we talked about Smitty, Mike Smith being a great recruiter in our bloodline into Louisiana. You look at our signing class kind of as a recap. There's the 5 players we signed from Louisiana, 5 we signed from Texas, and 3 from Arkansas. And then it goes 2 to Florida. So again, Texas we signed 5, Louisiana we signed 5, 3 from Arkansas, 2 from Florida. I want to compliment our coaching staff in evolving and adapting to the needs of the program. We have a bigger reach, a further reach than we used to have, and it's with the higher rated players. It's with the ones that we need and the ones that we go for. We're capturing. So I wanted to say that when you're talking about the recruits, it's a little bit different day today. Back then, you kind of made a commitment and you stuck to it. You were talking about in the early 80s, people leaving Arkansas. When I left Louisiana, it was a mass exodus of that dirty dozen you were talking about. We had 2 guys from the big schools in New Orleans go to Michigan. We had Notre Dame. We had the University of Texas, Arkansas, Steve Hudson and I. So out of that dirty dozen, you probably had, 8 that left the state, right, Rick? I mean, Stonebreaker.
My senior year, LSU only.
Yeah.
LSU landed 2 kids out of the city of New Orleans. 2.
Yeah, and also they got two or three coaches fired during about a stretch there that people forget now. Nick Saban had to turn things around.
Actually, it was Bill Arnsparger had left. And he's who recruited Mike. Archer came in, and Archer, they got so big-headed they didn't think that they needed to recruit Louisiana, but look, we saw the Louisiana kids left. Yeah. I mean, you're talking Ward Manuel, who was in Mike's class, who's now the athletic director at Michigan. I played against him. And then Mike competed against him, I think, in track and in the All-Star game. And, this guy was a stud out of high school. He could run. He was really kind of quick. He wasn't that great at Michigan, but, he was a big, huge recruit. He's a parade All-American. Bottom line is this. We are doing a better job of recruiting out of the city and of New Orleans, and Mike Smith is responsible.
This ties right back into what I was saying. I want to compliment this staff and the leadership at Arkansas for doing what they have to do to adapt to the needs. There's an opportunity in Louisiana, just described back in the 80s, and it exists today. LSU's not going to capture all the potential there. We're a border state. We have a tie with Mike Smith. So let's keep this guy. Let's keep our momentum in Louisiana with these schools. We've talked about Errett. We've talked about the different New Orleans schools where we have ends. So I think we're in a very good spot with recruiting there.
So is there anything that you would look at? One, this is a 2-part question, and let's forget the spring part. We will mention Singleton before we cut out of here as we start to run down out of time. But is there anything you would look at Belma and how he recruited this year that you might change? And secondly, I want to throw this at both of y'all. And speaking of Les Miles and Nick Saban, both have been able to seal the borders with a lot of the great recruits. Not all of them. He's on the hot seat. Everybody says if he doesn't win the championship or he doesn't make, if he loses 3 games like he did this year, next year, he's out. Gus Malzahn's looked at being on the hot seat. Auburn finished in the top 10 in recruiting. Charlie Strong knows if he doesn't win big, he's fired. They put it on at the end of the recruiting and finish in the top 10. I mean, I can go down the list. Kevin Sumlin had a pretty decently ranked class. He's on the hot seat. I'm looking at all these guys who I would think recruits would be going, well, I don't know if I should be going there. And they went there anyway. So 2-part question, that and should Belma change anything?
I think Belma needs to continue to do what he's doing. I think he's an excellent talent evaluator, and there's no doubt about it, because I believe the strength of his recruiting classes have not been at the top of the classes, but at the bottom of the classes. If you look at Corliss Marshall, Josh Liddell, and Willie Sykes, the last 3 guys to be offered by the University of Arkansas each year, all those guys played as true freshmen. So that's who he's at the bottom.
I will remind you, though, that Corliss Marshall basically got kicked off the team.
He did get kicked off the team. You're not going to hit 100%. I mean, you want to hit 80 like we talked about. He's keeping it roughly. He's got a turnover rate where he's, basically he loses 2 out of 10 guys, over the course of time, which is better than what we've had in the past, which is, like half of the guys ended up not making it in the program. So I wouldn't change a thing. The thing that people don't rate in star ratings is attitude, commitment, and intelligence. And I think this guy recruits very, very, very hard there. If you sit there, J.B. Grimes, who was at Auburn, who's an excellent offensive line coach, told me while he was at Arkansas State, working for Gus Malzahn, he goes, Rick, the best recruiting classes are the ones with the smart kids, because those kids turn into champions. Bottom line, they're not the best athletes. They're good people that work hard. And that's J.B. Grimes, who, has been all over the place. And Belma does that, and I think that's where he needs to definitely maintain what he's doing. Keep doing what he's doing, really, is what it is. And he's got to, at Arkansas, you're not going to win in a year like at Alabama. You're going to develop it over time.
Well, I forgot the questions. I'll answer those, but I want to go right piggyback right on that. Belma, we went to the recruiting event here in the Rock at Verizon. I also went to a high school coaching convention in Hot Springs Friday night with all the high school coaches. And Belma he was an open book with those guys. He talked about, and he showed the rankings of the GPA, the all-SEC number of players on each team. Guess who was number one? Arkansas. Has that ever occurred? I think he's on to something here. He needs to continue that. We had the top-rated GPA all-SEC academic roster. Number 2, Alabama. Is there a correlation with? Is there a correlation with the fact that Saban's offering 7 of the guys that we signed? I think not.
Yeah.
I think so. Number 3 was Vanderbilt. Arkansas, Alabama, Vanderbilt. And something that goes with our conversation here specifically, who was last? LSU was last on that list. I don't think they have things going well in Baton Rouge. I really don't. And when you're not recruiting an intelligent, emotionally intelligent, socially aware type of guy, you're going to have problems. And eventually the staff, the other players, and everybody around is managing something that doesn't pay off on the field. They're managing, it's inefficient. It's not going to pay off on the field. And so keep doing what you're doing, Belma. Keep doing what you're doing, Smitty. Keep recruiting the guys that you're bringing in. They want to be here. They've got the talent, and they have the desire. You talked about their work ethic. So that answers one of those questions.
Yeah, I think you answered it. Would Belma change anything? And second, it just is weird to me that these guys on the hot seat are still recruiting well. I know that Gus,
a 17-year-old kid, though, Jim, that doesn't understand what is going on in life, and they can't think beyond this week. And I think my dad and my brother, who are diehard LSU fans, can't wait for the day that Les Miles is gone, and they hope it happens next year, so they can continue to get these recruits and have somebody who can really coach them.
What was the question?
Gus, Les, Charlie, the hot seat guys all had pretty strong years.
Yeah. So, the hot seat guys.
Well, they're also probably in a panic. Not a panic, but in a, like, I got to recruit it this year, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think I saw in Belma and his staff, I saw a comfort. I think they were very comfortable with this class they just signed. I think they were happy with the way the season ended. These guys on the hot seat, too bad. Too bad. I'm not sure what their remedy is going to be. I know that we have very good momentum in every measure that counts with a program. So keep doing that.
All right. Well, let's put the Singleton thing off and talk about our new running back coach when that's hired. We'll have another Arkiana Hogs podcast. We love doing these things, and we'll keep you guys informed. You guys have any in on who they may hire?
No, the one thing I want to say is I just hope they keep our good friend of mine from high school and Mike Smith, Smitty. Coach Smitty's done an excellent job down in Louisiana. They definitely need to pay him, considering what our wide receivers did this past year, as well as the recruiting efforts. Because guess what? You need to stay in Louisiana. You need to stay in South Louisiana, in particular in the Catholic League in New Orleans. Yeah,
he definitely deserves a raise. I know that he was part of that group with Joel Thomas and, of course, Jim Chaney, who's gotten himself a raise at Georgia. Good luck over there, folks. And Sam Pittman left the staff, but they replaced him with Kurt Anderson, who looks like one of the most energetic guys. They're going to put him in Texas. I can see an area. I can see a growth in that area. That's a big area for Arkansas. Louisiana's a big area for Arkansas. I'm really excited. Next year out of Louisiana, you guys probably know this too, but this year was an all-around talent kind of year for Louisiana. Next year is supposed to be one of the best linemen, offense and defensive lineman classes out of Louisiana high schools in years. And it's certainly a good year for Arkansas to be looking for offensive linemen in that state and in that area, and as well as Texas. So I don't know. You guys want to chime in on that one?
Well, yeah, LSU, the one reason why we've been able to get LSU over the years really is we actually have put more people in the NFL than LSU has at the tight end and offensive line position. We've put 8 guys in the NFL, and LSU's only put 6, and that's 6 including the kid, Collins kid, who last year had the unfortunate incident at the draft where he didn't get drafted. He should have been drafted. So, LSU better get on the board with some offensive line guys, because guess what? Alabama's had 14 guys picked over the last 10 years. So that tells you a lot.
This guy follows his stuff, doesn't he?
Oh, that's why I hang out with him. So Alexander, the new guy, it's hard to use the term mini-me with him. Anderson, I'm sorry. But it's hard to use the term mini-me with Anderson because he's not a small guy. But he's another Belma. He has the same appeal, the same presence. They're both big guys, and I think they both enjoy recruiting the undervalued offensive and defensive linemen.
Okay, well, this podcast will stay out there for a while on Sporting Life Arkansas and maybe some other sites as well, but, we'll certainly close it out with that. Exciting. I tell you what, when you listen to these two guys, you can forget all this whining that went on signing day with some guys going here and there and somebody backing out. It was probably a reach for a backup cornerback anyway. We won't go into that any further. We'll have another podcast down the road. No certain plan, but keep a lookout here on Sporting Life and elsewhere. Jim Harris 360 Twitter account. Rick David.
It's Rick David Hogg.
Rick David Hogg on Twitter and Shep Hogg on Twitter. We'll keep you posted on where to hear the podcast. So anyway, thanks for joining us on Super Bowl Sunday. You're probably listening to it after the game. We're not going to make any predictions, of course, but join us on the next podcast, and we'll cover it from there. Thanks again, everybody. This has been the Arkiana Hogs podcast. Jim Harris, your host, Rick David, and Mike Shepard. We'll see you next time.
Follow those flippers into their